Hello techies, welcome back. Today our topic is Spring Boot 3 with distributed tracing. Generally, distribution tracing we used to work like in Spring Boot up to before Spring Boot 3. We used Spring Cloud Sleuth as a tool which I have used for the distributed tracing. First of all, what is distributed tracing? Example, like let's say we have a one microservice. So microservices, we have different services. So when we make any call to the service, then what happens? So this call internally, let's assume that this service calls this one, and this service calls this one, this service calls this one. Example, M1 microservice, M2 microservice, M3 microservice, and M4 microservice. So we make a call, and then here it internally calls from M1 to M2, M2 to the M3. So let's say if you want to trace this entire call, what has happened in this service and in this service, generally what we can do, like we can go in the logs and verify it. But there is a problem, very much problem, like, let's say what request, so for suppose if you want to trace it out in case of any problem, or if you want to trace some data, it is mismatched. Some such a kind of issues, what we can do, we can go through the logs. But in microservice environment, so everybody facing so much of problem, how can we trace the entire the request log? That is a problem. So previously for that one, we had a solution. Previously it was a cloud sleuth, Spring Cloud Sleuth. It was providing. So it was good, but due to some issues like internally the format which is using, later upgrade, Spring Boot 3 upgrade. So one of the thing they have migrated, instead of using Cloud Sleuth, they have gone for the metrics services, metrics tracing basically. Okay, so in the matrix tracing, what happens? So it also generates the same logs. Let's say when we make a call to the one service, it generates a logs. The same way how we used to generate the logs, it generates it, and then it generates the unique ID. Okay, for that unique ID, what we can do, to, the trace ID basically, what we can do, we can take the trace ID and then we continue, like, we verify in all the services. But remember, these all the services logs, we cannot go individual service and verify the logs. It's not like that. We can ask Spring Boot, hey, we have a great feature in actuator providing, that is Prometheus. So with the help of Prometheus, we can track all the all the logs and then send it to the one distributed system. Example, we have, Splunk, Datadog, and much more, whatever, up to your wish. Grafana, what, like, anything else you can use it, right? So once the all services logs are there in such a, you know, one place, then how can you trace it out? Like, one particular request related logs travel all together. So by adding that particular unique generated ID from the, uh, you know, uh, matrix traced, how it is generating. So let me take a tour, like, how the work is happening and what are the things we required. So only thing is here, dependency is the one. I mean, first dependencies we need to add. So these are the dependencies. So this is very important to generate the tracing for microservice. Micrometer tracing Brave is the important one. After that, like, if you see that, if we want to send our logs to the one particular place, right, for all the applications, so this is the important one. Again, if you want to send logs, metrics generated logs to the Prometheus, right, so this is the one which helps in that case. And important another one, like, this particular two properties we have to add, for not only for the sampling, and also it is required for the, Prometheus, we need to send logs. Let's go to the practicals, like, without delay, right? So let's jump into the service. So this is one of the application which I have created. So if you see here, pom.xml file, I'm using the Spring Boot version is 3, latest version is 3.3.1, and then Java, which version I'm using 11, and this actuator, it is required. for the Prometheus log expansion, but I'm not showing the say common place, but I will show you how to do, how the log is generating with the help of metrics. So here important kind of thing is this is the one for Prometheus, and this is for the tracing purpose we are adding. And anyway, this is we know like Lombok and all fine. And let's come to the application properties file. And here it is mandatory like application name. Why? Because it internally uses that part. And then the server port I'm using 9191. That's okay. And this is for as I explained in the WordPad, like for the sampling. And then this is for the Prometheus. And remember, this is if you want to any customization log wants to generate, so you can use this log pattern. Okay, trace ID and span ID, we can define something like this. If you don't define it by default, it generates no problem. If you want to customized format want to define like you can define something like this. In my case, I'm going with the default, so I commented this one. If you want, you can uncomment and work on that. And these are all some normal classes. Let's say if I go to account controller, just controller service class and something like this, and you can see here example like just this is a normal logs and the register and then all and then whatever the logs it is generating. I mean to say the simple endpoints. So added logs all the places, and let's go to the service. In service class, I have similar kind of implementation. Simple data storage I have used for the map, and these are the some logs which generated. Simple data storage I'm using here. Just let's start this application. Let's start this application and see how it is happening. And no other configurations are required. The configurations are simple, right? And then you can see this is a regular one, like exceptions and all. This is a regular coding, right? So main important part is adding a dependency in the pom.xml file and updating in the properties file. If you want a customization, you can do customize as well. But later videos we can discuss about the customization a lot. But right now I'm going with the sample one. Let's go to this particular area. What I'm going to do, I'm going to call for one of the endpoint. Example, if I'm going to call all as an endpoint, okay, and I'm going here and then call all endpoint. Let me just add it this one, and it is calling the backend service, and finally it returns the data. For now, we don't have any data in the map object because I haven't registered anything. So, but we can come back here and see how it is generating. So you can see this is the application name, right? And then here you see that whatever the logs I have added in the controller, first it calls get all accounts method. And you see this is the trace ID and this is the span ID which is generated. By using this trace ID, span ID is, same for, I mean, span ID generates uniquely for request to request. Let's call to call. But whereas trace ID, example like this trace ID, assume that this is a service. When we call it, first it generates the trace ID, and when this another one microservice is called to another microservices, the same trace ID, we can see here as well. But span ID is different. This application span ID is different. This application span ID is different. But even if it is called different application, microservice application, trace ID is same, but span ID is different. Okay, that is how we can trace out entire log history, how that log the request has been traveled, right? We can see that way. Let's talk about another one. Like this is one application I'm talking. Let's say I have another application. I want to show you like one microservices. Let's say if it called to another microservice, how log is generating. Let's go back here. This is a simple application again. This is a transaction application. So here what is happening? Like just created a one small controller and added this small controller here. The request mapping and simple method. And service class also it has. So in service class also added just simple log and haven't called any application but just returning the message, success message. But remember here also same thing. Just added the actuator Prometheus, and this is again important to generate the trace and span tracing basically, and then rest of the things are common. And a similar way here also in the application properties file, what I have done, like you can see just application name I have provided, but here port, remember port number is 9292, and these are the things which I enabled it. Here application is also started, right? So let's come back here in Spring Boot 3, what I have done this particular application. So let's go to the configuration, test template configuration. This the simple configuration I have defined here in the config section, and then in the service section, what I have done, just auto wide that REST template, and then here I'm making a call for the processing the transaction. So I call the REST template dot passing that particular URL, and for the call to the another service. That's it. Okay, so this is also started and that application is also started. So for this particular method calling, what I have done, like I have created a one more endpoint here in the controller class. You see that the last one, this is process transaction calls this one. Let's go back here, and instead of all, what I'm going to replace with process transaction. And it is processed, and you can see it is still getting the response because one application is talking to another application. Yeah, finally we got the success response. That's okay. That's fine. But you come back here and see. So this is the process transaction. Actual request starts from this place. Okay. So, and you see for this particular, the previous request, trace ID was generated and span ID was different. Okay, this is another new request we have made for the process transaction. So here you see for this new request, another trace ID has been generated. Okay, here I'm copying. Remember, this is the starting of the application, starting microservice. And you can see span ID is different, 339E. Just remember that. And I'm going to transaction service. Just here, I'm seeing the logs, Control F, Control V, and you see the same trace ID here as well. But remember, this is span ID is different because this is a different application. But the same trace ID is here. So you can verify this trace ID. Let's say your favorite, data storages, I mean log storages, example, either Datadog or else Splunk or else whatever your wish you are using. So just use that particular, span ID as a reference, sorry, filtration, and you can get the entire, request related, along how it is traveled from one service to another service. Total, what is tra traveling from first microservice, the where we call from first service to the last service. This is how it is, very simple, guys. Okay, and later we can make another videos for we can do more customization. Okay, I hope it helps you. Thanks. Bye bye.